She is not going to ask you directly, not ever, not in the clean, unambiguous way that would make this simple. What she is going to do is ask you something else entirely, something that sounds like casual conversation, something that sounds like curiosity, something that sounds like the kind of question anyone might ask anyone in the middle of an ordinary interaction. But it is not ordinary, and she is not anyone. When a woman secretly desires an older man and has not yet found a way to say it, or decided whether it is safe to say it, her desire does not stay silent. It cannot. It finds its way out through the only channels available to it. The channels that carry just enough plausible deniability that if you miss the signal, she can tell herself she never sent one. Those channels are questions, specific questions, questions that sound like conversation but function as reconnaissance. Questions whose surface meaning is entirely innocent and whose real meaning is something she would never say out loud but cannot stop herself from asking. Tonight, I am going to give you three of them. I am going to show you the exact psychological architecture of why each one appears when it appears. I am going to show you what she is actually measuring with each question underneath its surface. And I am going to show you how to respond to each one in a way that does not shut the door she is quietly opening. Stay with me until the end, because the third question is the one that most men answer completely wrong. Not because they misread the signal, but because they read it correctly and then panic. And the specific way most men panic when they receive this question is the exact response that closes a door that may not open again. Before I give you the first question, I need to say something directly. If you have ever had a conversation with a woman that felt like it was operating on two levels simultaneously, where what was being said and what was actually happening in the room were clearly two different things, and you could feel the gap between them but could not find the words to describe it, that was not your imagination. That was a woman navigating the specific tension between what she feels and what she has calculated is safe to show. And every man who has felt that gap and not known what to do with it deserved exactly the information I am about to give you. Why she asks instead of tells. Before the three questions, 30 seconds of psychology that will make everything else make complete sense. A woman who secretly desires an older man is managing a specific and unusually complex emotional situation. She is carrying an attraction that operates against several social scripts simultaneously. The age gap script, the friendship or professional context script if one exists. The script that tells her desire is only legitimate when it arrives in the expected format at the expected time toward the expected kind of person. None of those scripts are her nervous system. Her nervous system is doing something independent of all of them. It has identified something in this specific man, a quality of presence, a density of self, a specific way he occupies a room and a conversation that it responds to with a clarity and an intensity that the scripts have no adequate response to. So she is managing two things simultaneously: the pull toward him and the protection of herself from the exposure that moving toward him directly would require. Research on what psychologists call approach-avoidance conflict, the simultaneous experience of strong desire to move toward something and strong fear of the consequences of moving toward it, shows that the behavioral output of this conflict is almost never direct action in either direction. It is indirect probing. Small, carefully calibrated movements toward the thing that can be retracted instantly if the response is not safe. The questions are those movements. Each one is a probe, disguised as conversation, carrying a real signal that she will only acknowledge if you demonstrate that you are the kind of man who can receive it without making the receiving of it more costly than the sending. Question 1. What was your life like when you were younger? This is the first one, and it arrives earlier than you might expect, often in the first real conversation, sometimes in the second, in a quiet moment when the social noise has died down enough for something more genuine to surface. She asks about your past, not in the biographical resume style way of someone gathering information, in a specific, slightly softer way, leaning in rather than back, more still than she was a moment ago, asking about who you were before you were who you are now. On the surface, this is entirely innocent. People ask each other about their histories all the time. But the specific version of this question, asked by a woman who has been in your presence long enough to feel the pull she is feeling, is doing something more precise than collecting biographical data. Research on what attachment theorists call origin curiosity, the specific interest in a person's formative history that emerges when attachment is beginning to form, shows that this type of question is one of the earliest behavioral signals of genuine romantic interest, not platonic interest, romantic. The desire to understand not just who someone is now, but who they were before. The desire to access the full continuity of a person rather than just the present tense version. She is asking because she wants to know the whole of you, not the curated present tense version you offer to the world, the version that was built from something, the version that had difficulty and doubt and the specific private experience of becoming who you are. She wants to stand at the beginning of the story and walk it forward, because what she is feeling about you is not casual enough for the surface level version to satisfy it. But there is a second layer to this question that is even more telling. When a woman asks an older man about his younger years, she is also, below her conscious awareness, running a very specific evaluation. She is assessing continuity of character, whether the man he was and the man he is share the same essential quality, or whether who he is now is a performance assembled from what time and circumstance taught him to project. And here is what she is hoping to find: evidence that who he is now was always in him, that the settledness, the gravity, the specific quality of presence she is responding to was not achieved by burying something. It was built by living through something. The difference between those two things is everything to her nervous system. A man who is calm because he has suppressed is fragile under pressure. A man who is calm because he has lived through enough to know what actually matters is the opposite of fragile. And she is trying to determine through this one question which kind of man she is sitting across from. How you answer this question matters more than most men realize. The wrong answer is the highlight reel, the curated, impressive, slightly polished version of your past that tells her who you want her to think you were. She will feel the curation, not the content, the curation. The right answer is the real one. Not dramatic, not performed vulnerability, simply the actual texture of what your younger years contained. The specific, honest, unpolished version that carries the evidence she is looking for. That the man sitting across from her is continuous with a real past. That he is not assembled from the outside. That he was always building towards something real from the inside. When she receives that answer, something in her evaluation resolves. And the question she asks next will be closer to the real thing. Question 2: do you ever get lonely? Pay very close attention to this one, because this is the question that most men deflect without knowing what they just deflected. It arrives after the first real connection has formed, after a conversation that went somewhere genuine, after a moment of warmth that both of you felt and neither of you entirely named. And it sounds, on the surface, like empathy, like a woman checking in on a man she cares about, like the kind of thing a thoughtful friend might ask. It is not that, or rather, it is not only that. When a woman asks a man she secretly desires whether he gets lonely, she is asking a question with three distinct layers simultaneously, and all three layers are about her. The first layer is access. She is asking whether there is space in his life for someone, whether the architecture of his daily existence has room for another person's presence. She is not asking abstractly. She is asking whether there is room for her specifically, in a language that does not require her to say that. The second layer is safety. She is asking whether his emotional life is organized around absence, whether loneliness is a wound in him that she would be asked to fill, which is not what she wants, or whether it is simply a honest acknowledgement that genuine connection is rare and he recognizes it as rare. The latter is not vulnerability that requires rescue. It is the specific, grounded honesty of a man who knows his own interior clearly enough to describe it accurately without drama. The third layer, the deepest one, is permission. She is asking, in the only indirect language available to her, whether you would welcome what she is beginning to feel, whether the door is open, not the physical door, the door of genuine mutual wanting. She cannot ask that directly. So she asks whether you get lonely, and she listens to how you answer with everything she has. Dr. Brene Brown's research on vulnerability and connection documents that the specific experience of being asked about one's emotional interior by someone who is simultaneously offering their own, which is what this question is one of the most significant triggers for emotional intimacy available in human interaction. Because the question itself is an act of mild exposure. She is revealing that she thinks about your interior, that she has been wondering about what it is like to be you, that she has been thinking about you beyond the surface of the interactions you have had. Most men, when they receive this question, do one of two things. They dismiss it. I stay pretty busy. I don't really have time to feel lonely, which closes the door she just opened by making his emotional interior inaccessible. Or they overshare, producing a flood of genuine loneliness that shifts the emotional register of the interaction from attraction to caretaking. The right response is neither. It is the honest, settled, unhurried acknowledgement that yes, there are specific kinds of connection that are rare and genuinely valuable, that you know the difference between being alone and being lonely, and that you are at ease enough in yourself to distinguish between the two without drama. Then you return the question, not immediately, not mechanically, after a breath, with genuine curiosity about her answer. Because when you ask her back, you are telling her that her interior matters to you the way she just showed you that yours matters to her. And in that exchange, that specific, mutual, completely unhurried exchange of genuine interior honesty, the approach avoidance conflict that has been running in her nervous system shifts. The avoidance side weakens. The approach side does not become a flood, it becomes a direction, a clear, felt, unmistakable movement toward you that she will still not name out loud, but that both of you will feel in the quality of every interaction that follows. If this is opening something real for you right now, take 2 seconds and hit the like button. Because this is the information that most men spend years looking for without knowing what they are looking for. And every person who engages helps another man find it at exactly the moment it matters most. Now, let me give you the third question, the one I told you at the beginning that most men answer completely wrong. Question 3. What do you think you deserve? This one arrives last, sometimes weeks after the first two, sometimes in the same conversation if the connection has moved quickly, and it arrives in various forms. Sometimes as, what do you actually want from life at this point? Sometimes as, do you think you have gotten what you deserve? Sometimes as simply, what do you want? But the core of it is always the same. She is asking you what you believe about your own worth. And she is asking because the answer to this question will tell her more about whether pursuing what she feels is safe than anything else you could possibly communicate. Here is the psychology of why. A man who does not believe he deserves genuine, reciprocal, fully mutual desire will accept less than that. He will accommodate arrangements that don't reflect what he actually wants. He will interpret his own desire as an imposition rather than as information. And a woman who secretly desires this man will, on some level, know that pursuing what she feels could result in him receiving it with apology rather than with the specific settled warmth that transforms attraction into something real. She is not asking because she wants to audit your self-esteem. She is asking because she needs to know that if she takes the risk of moving toward you, what she finds on the other side is a man who can stand in the full reality of being genuinely wanted without shrinking from it. Research in self-determination theory documents that individuals with genuine internal locus of self-worth, those whose sense of deserving is built from their own values and experience rather than from external validation, respond to intimacy and desire with a qualitatively different behavioral signature than those whose self-worth is externally contingent. The internally grounded man receives desire as something that makes sense, as something that fits the reality of who he knows himself to be. He does not perform gratitude or surprise. He receives it with the quiet, warm recognition of something that was always possible. That quality of reception is what she is trying to determine is available to her before she takes the risk. The wrong answer is false modesty. I don't know that I deserve much. I have made a lot of mistakes. This answer tells her that his self-worth is still organized around his failures rather than his totality. That desire directed toward him will need to do the work of convincing him he is worth it. That is not a weight she wants to carry. The wrong answer is also overcorrection. I deserve everything delivered with the specific quality of a man who is trying to perform confidence rather than inhabit it. She can feel the performance. It produces the opposite of what it intends. The right answer is the one that comes from a man who has actually sat with this question at some point in his real life and arrived at a genuine answer. Something like, I think I deserve what's real, not perfect, real, mutual, something that doesn't require anyone to perform anything they don't actually feel. Delivered without urgency, without the slight upward inflection of a man seeking her confirmation that the answer was the right one. That answer does something to her nervous system that nothing else in this sequence has done. It tells her that the space she would be moving into is held by a man who knows his own worth clearly enough to neither inflate it nor diminish it. A man who would receive what she is beginning to offer without making the offering of it more complicated than it needs to be. And in the specific silence after that answer, something in the approach avoidance conflict resolves completely. The avoidance has nothing left to justify itself with. What comes after the third question? Here is what I need you to understand about the full arc of what I have just described. These three questions are not a test she designed. They are not a strategy she deployed consciously. They are the involuntary behavioral output of a nervous system that is navigating genuine desire in the presence of genuine risk. The question about your past was her reaching for the whole of you. The question about loneliness was her checking whether the door was open. The question about what you deserve was her making sure that what she is about to offer will land in the right hands. A man who understands what these questions are doing does not need to manufacture a response to them. He needs to be honest enough in himself to answer them from the real place rather than from the performed one. The real past without curation. The real interior without either dismissal or drama. The real sense of his own worth without inflation or apology. Because she is not looking for impressive answers. She is looking for a man whose self-knowledge is complete enough that her desire for him fits inside a life that already has shape and substance and genuine interior architecture. When she finds that, when each of her three questions returns an answer that confirms the man she is drawn to is exactly as real as he feels to her. The desire she has been carrying quietly stops being a secret she manages. It becomes the direction she moves in, without announcement, without drama. With the specific, settled, completely clear movement of a woman who has done her reconnaissance and found that the territory she was hoping for is exactly what it appeared to be. You were always that territory. You simply needed to know what she was asking. Subscribe to this channel right now, because this is where we give you the complete, honest, research-grounded truth about what women are actually communicating beneath the surface of what they say. Like this video and share it with a man who has been receiving these questions without knowing what he was receiving. He has been missing signals that were sent clearly, and now he will not miss the next one. The next video goes even deeper into the psychology of female desire and how it communicates in the language most men were never taught to read. Do not miss it.